Hello, my name is Alfredo. Welcome to my piano spacetime. In this video you will find my study discussion about Chopin's Etude Opus 25 number 9 in G-flat major. This video might be of your interest in case you want to study this piece at the piano, as I will share a number of considerations about what I think is important to consider when studying this piece. Let's play it once and then I will start with my considerations. As I normally do, I intend to give to this presentation a rather practical cut. But before starting right away with the musical material, with the music score, let's spend a couple of minutes for some general considerations. I decided to study this piece by using an antique edition that is freely available on the internet. You can visit the Petrucci Music Library, or IMSLP, I think. However, I will copy the link to the score from that website in the description notes. The fact that it is a very antique edition gives to me some confidence that the details, the notes, the expression marks are sort of faithful to the original manuscript of Chopin. Unfortunately, I don't own a copy of the manuscript and I couldn't find for the etudes the manuscripts in a freely available version. However, once again, since this edition is dating back, I think, to the mid-19th century, it gives to me some confidence that I have a number of details pretty faithful to the original. I also own a study edition since a few decades, but after a quick analysis of that score, I realized easily that there were a number of details that were not original from Chopin, and on the contrary, a few details have been removed in that edition, details that most likely are coming instead from the original manuscript. This edition is a Breitkopf and Hartel, and with this I mean to underline not that I believe that my duty, our duty, is to strictly respect all the notes in the original manuscript, but I do believe that seeing them, being aware of them, is the best starting point to work then with our own rendition of the work. As it is well known, Chopin's time pianos were instruments very different in many different terms from the more modern pianos, and therefore what could sound good at that time with those instruments may not in some situations necessarily sound again good as well with a modern piano. I wanted to give a couple of practical examples about what I think regarding acknowledging the original marks, considering them and deciding what to do with them, whether respecting or perhaps apply some adjustments, some modifications. If we take the very last part of this etude, so basically the last line, we are noticing in this edition that there is a very long pedal mark that goes goes basically for the entire line until the second last measures. Let's play it once to hear how it feels. I hope that through the microphone something will go through. Well, in the last part of the line, where there is this bouncing of the left hand, for my taste, it sounds definitely too, how could I say, bombastic in a way. So I feel that with this piano, it is not the best musical choice, according to my taste, to stick with the original notation. Instead, some adjustment that might be to break the pedal in different shorter lines when we reach that point, or to remove the pedal completely would be a better choice. Let's see how it feels. First with short pedals. Or removing the pedal completely at the end of the line. Well, for me, either one of the two last choices is what I prefer. And another example, instead on the opposite direction, to underline how, for me, it looks interesting, the original set of pedal marks on the score. It is at the end of the second line, so as you notice, there are no pedal marks at all for the first line, where that to me would mean perhaps to use the pedal but with extremely brief touches, if not using the pedal at all. But then, interestingly, the pedal appears, and in a quite intriguing way, because the bass line is then creating a sort of playful melody by using the pedal in the way it is written. So the left hand is doing with the pedal as it is written, no pedal here. Once again. With the right hand. So I find this very interesting musically, and so I decided to work along maintaining this pedal use during my studying. The other preliminary general consideration I wanna do is regarding the particular, how to say, structural performing nature of the etudes of Chopin's. In general, each of them is built around a specific technical performing figure. And so, in reality, our work on the etude will be proficient to build a musical expression, provided that we find a good performing key for that specific technical figures that we have to work on. And as long as we don't find that performance key, we can work tens and tens or hundreds of hours. But if the aim is to respect Chopin's metronome tempos in the etudes, unfortunately all that bunch of work will at certain point leads to some frustrating results in hitting certain walls and constraints and not being able to let music come out from our performance. And what is the performing key? Well, often, unfortunately, it's not a concise formula that can be expressed, but instead realizing a more or less complex a set of movements, so let's say a choreography, that by using the different parts of our playing mechanism in a proper way allows to perform with those very fast speeds that typically we find in etudes and those complicated figures, allow to perform them in a fairly natural way for what it is possible. So the rest of this video will be to kind of present what for myself I found as my performing figure, without claiming that that's the best, the unique or whatever, but to share with you what my studying on this piece led me to realize. The first step that I think is important to do, for sure in this situation, is to search for a coherent aural image of what we are gonna play. In fact, I believe that if the aural image is incoherent, there is the risk that it will work in the background against the establishing of a good musical fluid choreography and expression. So I will try to sing a couple of quarters to show what I mean with searching an aural image. And I will try at first doing that in a evidently improper way. So looking at the first bars, I am seeing all these semiquavers in sequence. So I might ingeniously think that the aural image could be and this is hilariously awkward, clearly. So let's now move with some more musical and convincing aural image. Well, I am now looking with more attention at the score, and of course we see that we don't have only a number of semiquavers, but the main beats are absorbed by a quaver. And then there is even a slur that goes from this first important note to the third semiquaver. And this, in my way of decoding it, might sound like tan ta ta 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 tan. And with this little exercise, I am clearly realizing that not all notes are equal, carry an equal function and importance in the melodic line that I need to perform. And this suggests also that my physical actions is not expected to be a kind of mechanic sequence of keys strikes, kind of machine gun playing. No, there are notes that carry a particular amount of meaning in the line, and notes such as clearly the second semiquavers of each quarter that have a very secondary function. Actually, melodically, they don't even have a function. Is, in my opinion, something merely on the rhythmical side. And now let's go more in details in what to do to build our choreography with this study. I wanted to spend a few minutes on something that possibly for some of you might be very well understood at the point you are if you have in mind to study this etude. But I think that the risk is this might be for some of us not necessarily true. And so spending a few minutes on the fundamental good old concepts of piano technique is very important, how to say, to make sure that we start from the same page. So the first thing to say is that in piano playing, the fingers are not the central, let me say, the most important part of our playing mechanism. Our playing mechanism is actually composed by the fingers, the hand, the forearm, the upper arm that is linked to our shoulders, that then stays thanks to our torso that is sitting on the on the bench. And now let's spend a little time to explore what the main parts of the playing mechanism can do, and to kind of focus about how we can exploit them in this particular texture we have in front. Now, the fingers. We won't say much about that. They are peripheral items that basically will channel the energy that is mostly generated upstream by the rest of the playing mechanism. And my finger, of course, if used by itself, can do simply something like this. Very simple. And it is quite rare that fingers are used alone on their own with their only playing capability to strike the keys. Now let's start moving upstream. So I see the hand is another element, and now I start noticing that whereas with the fingers, the finger itself is a very light part of the body, so its weight doesn't have any capability in itself to strike a key. If I lift my finger and I let it drop, it doesn't do much in terms of providing energy to lower a key. Now, with my hand instead, I start realizing that I have some weight available, and so this weight is of some use in striking my keys, right? What I'm doing, I am kind of holding my hand without lifting anything in my arm. I am working just from the wrist downstream, in a way of saying. So I lift my hand and I release. The hand itself is carrying some weight, and this weight is a good thing because it means I have available an amount of energy that can be exploited to play, to lower the keys while playing. Let's move up. So I have my forearm, the same thing, and even more effectively, the forearm has probably a weight, I don't know, between 1 to 2 kilos, something like this, between bone and muscles together with the hand. So this part of the body is definitely very powerful in terms of providing energy with the purpose of lowering my keys. And again, I keep going towards the shoulder. I have another articulated lever that is my upper arm. And even in this case, so let's kind of freeze all the rest. I lift my upper arm and I leave him drop. I have very considerable energy available because of the gravity and the mass of all this part of the body to strike a key. Energy available at low cost, at no cost, I would say. And now there is a point, for what concerns fingers, hand and forearm, the only thing I can do is playing, monodirectionally, or with a positive drop. That means, let's take the forearm for example, but the same concept is applicable for my hand and even more for the finger. What I have to do, I need to let the forearm provide energy to press a keys. I need to lift it and to leave it, right? I'm not here to say that playing means exactly just to leave the arm. Sometimes it's perhaps throwing the arm. It depends. However, we can say very clearly one thing. We have a strong partner with our forearm action. That is gravity. That means it gives energy without our efforts to be produced. So it helps to reduce our F-force gravity. But one thing that I notice is that the forearm can strike, and after striking I need to lift it to be ready for another strike, right? Strike, lift. So when I play with my forearm, I am seeing two semi-cycles in its action. One cycle that can be partnering with gravity when I fall, but the other cycle that I call it a reload cycle, it's absolutely my muscular work to lift the weight of my forearm and getting ready for the next strike. And this is interesting because instead, when we move to analyze what our upper arm is capable of doing, we realize that this is the element that gives available energy not only in the positive dropping, in the positive fall, but in a way I can use energy coming from the movement of my upper arm, even in the reloading of its choreography. Maybe some of you knows this very well. A few of you perhaps haven't heard this until this point, and this is not my realizations. There are a number of piano teachers that wrote interesting books and or expressed this in a number of situations. Let's see precisely what it means. I once again strike my keys using my upper arm fall. What does it mean to let the upper arm fall? It means, first of all, to lift it to a certain point. That means to rotate it. Rotating the upper arm, I am lifting my elbow, and with the elbow everything that is linked there can be lifted. I lift my elbow and I let it drop. And notice that to recharge my upper arm, what I need to do is to rotate it in the opposite direction. But this has a component of motion that is towards the keyboard. The elbow, in order to reach again an upper position because of my upper arm rotation, is actually traveling in this direction. And I can exploit that kinetic energy to strike my keys while I reload, right? I do it first with a crippled hand. So I drop. I am literally pushing the forearm, hand and fingers to strike keys while lifting my upper arm. Now let's see it in a more pianistic configurations. I'll play notes by dropping my arm, and then I recharge it and I play notes during the recharge movements. The engine is the rotation of the upper arm, and I am noticing that with proper training, of course, I can channel this energy for a dual action while playing. That is not available with the other parts when used alone. The forearm can just do. There is no motion components during my reloading that is helpful to strike keys, and the same for the hand. So the upper arm is unique in these terms, and I believe this is a very important thing to be aware of and to cultivate while studying the difficult patterns of this etude. So we call this specific choreography possibility of the upper arm alternating action, and we'll see how to use it while building up our skill to play this etude. I start showing in practice what it means on the etude by taking bar 17, simply because in the way it is built, it helps to be gradually expressing all the considerations I want to present regarding the alternating action. So in the right hand, I have the first note. The first note could be taken by a prevailing forearm action. And now, a possibility is to keep going, charging my upper arm in a position that will allow a drop on the third semiquaver. I do it again. Charge with the upper arm, drop. Now I am down, I can recharge using the alternating action. Once again. Now I am up, I can drop again with right arm. I recharge it, and while recharging I use the energy of the lift of the elbow to strike my A and D. Now I am up again, I can get down with a drop, and then I recharge my arm, and while doing that I strike my B flat. Was it clear enough? I'll play it once again, exaggerating, hoping that will be evident what I'm doing through the video. Lift, drop, lift. And hoping to make things crystal clear, I thought to use a particular notation that I think will resolve fairly easy to grasp, as you see in the video. So when you see F, it means that I feel that mainly the upper arm can be in charge to taking the strike, so with a positive drop. And then you see that kind of mirrored one is a sort of arrow that is referred to the position of the elbow. So that little arrow going up says tilt, rotate the upper arm so that your elbow is going up. And while doing this, there is inevitably also a movement towards the piano, and is this one that is channeled by the fingers to take the third interval, the B flat and the E flat that I have in the second semiquavers. Then I can just fall. I am down with my elbow, I recharge. This is part of the game. This is important, but there are other things to elaborate, and I'll start with that in a moment. Let's just make a pause and have a check at the left hand. The left hand has to bounce between bass and chords here, and I feel that its action can be predominantly taken by the upper arm, because this won't have to play at the frequency of the semiquavers, so it will have time to, as I said, to repeat this positive drop, recharging it while I jump from one note to the other. So. And I want to underline one thing, that when I say I will let the upper arm to predominantly work, it's important not to constrain with our mind, with our thinking, what our body is instead inclined to do in a natural way. So we can have a rational model, but then it's important to monitor with our feeling, physical feeling, and of course checking the musical result, those tiny adjustments that our body, driven by the ear, would be capable of doing. So I'm not even sure if I am exclusively using the forearm or if I have a certain contribution by the upper arm or perhaps by the hand. But these things, I think, shall go naturally while repeating our patterns and searching for the ergonomic and fluid way to perform it. To build gradually the speed, what we can do is to remove part of the notes so that we simplify the situation and we start focusing on the pillars, in a way of saying, of the choreography. So we can do like and so on. And so, up to this point, I think I explained, I hope, sufficiently clearly this basic concept of the alternating action and how to apply it to this particular bar. The problem is that, as I realized, thinking of merely, how to say, copying and pasting this basic choreography for all the about 50 plus bars of this etude is not ergonomic and a good thing to express with sufficient fluidity this music with the speed that Chopin wants us to play at. And so I had to scratch my head and to see what kind of adjustments were available to achieve as good as I can that target. And this will be what we are now going to explore with the next considerations. We can identify more or less a few issues for the reason why this basic alternating action choreography is not optimal in view of performing the entire number of bars of the piece. A first point is that, yes, when we let our arm drop, there is, how to say, a free availability of energy from the gravity combined with the mass of our arms. But the problem is that for every drop that we do, we have then to buy the energy in preparing the next drop. And so, at this speed, with this frequency of drop and lift, I was feeling clearly that all in all this was quite strenuous to bear for the whole set of bars of the piece. But there are other reasons, and there are a few passages that are particularly unforgiving. For example, at bar 21, 22 and on, where we play in this configuration. Now here, if you notice, our body configuration has changed substantially with respect to what it happens, for instance, at the beginning, where we have our arm basically near to the resting position, near the torso. So when I play at the beginning, like, it is very efficient, very effective, this mechanism of drop and charge with little effort. But when I need to open my arm to reach the farther away keys on the keyboard, then you see that my muscles need to work, so to already produce a certain amount of inevitable strain to fight back gravity that is tending to push back the arm in his position. So when we play in this situation, we have our muscle systems already loaded to some degree to maintain this configuration. And a last consideration is, based on the textures of the specific bars, we have different levels of keys to deal with. And also this, after a close look, will show that depending on how the black and white keys are in that particular point where my playing mechanism is, the fact of performing a reload of my action would easily look not optimal in certain configurations. So these are a few hints to see more or less under a rational point of view why sticking with the basic alternative action wouldn't be a good thing for the entire piece. Let's go on with the score and let's see in detail what it means to search for adjustments that will improve the ergonomics of our choreography. So, starting at bar 1 this time, we see that the first notes and the bouncing in the left hand can be taken with forearm action, right? I have the second semiquavers that can just be taken by my fingers that in this configuration work very, very well for a secondary beat. So nothing happened basically with my forearm and upper arm. At this point I can use my upper arm for a drop in the third semiquaver, that is the second important beat in the quarter. So at this point I am down with my elbow. I will reload as per the alternating action ordinary principle, and reloading I pick up the C natural along the way. At this point, here is the adjustment I want to show. It's not necessary and probably not optimal for me to drop again with my upper arm, because I realized that the elbow could provide energy simply through an extended travel, an extended push, and this energy can be taken by my hand to strike the B flat. Right? So look at this. Further push. Now I have the B chords in the right hand, my fingers are capable of handling that. And I am already in a high position for a drop on the E flat. At this point, I have the B flat that again I can take with a reload along the way, and I land with a drop on the G flat. Now I will have the secondary main beat, the A flat, that is basically at the same level of the G flat. So I feel I need to recharge. So I take the B chords, recharging my elbow, ready for a drop. And here again the trick. I don't need to recharge my upper arm to take the A natural that will comes right after, because I can extend my fall of the elbow to have energy in the downward motion available to pick up the A natural. So first drop, Further drop. At this point I recharge, picking up the main beat, pushing the elbow. Sorry if this was quite boring, but I really meant to show in detail, as clearly as possible, the basics of the idea. So now I will shut up and play a few times it to let you consolidate the points. And I forgot that the left hand is always staccato, right? And so we start slowing, of course, to kind of metabolize what is available in terms of energy and kinesthetic action, and then to move towards the final tempo. As I said before, it's, I think, an effective practice to remove notes and to practice little bits of the whole patterns to see whether the ergonomics is really working. And let's not forget that we have these accent marks on the first notes of the quarter, so we have to calibrate our action, depending on the case, could be in the forearm, as in the very first note, or in my upper arm rotation, to give certain emphasis to that note. And as you're seeing, I think that a couple of bars, in the most difficult places even a single bar, are an adequate, I think, section to work on to build up our performing skill. So I think the concept has been presented, and you might wanna stop here, but I intend just to keep going and to show in practice what it means to perform this choreography that at every section needs a particular adjustment to be ergonomic. And however, I will post a link to the score of this piece where I marked with my hand those little notation marks suggesting the way of using the upper arm drop in the different points. So you are free to take it if you like and see whether it fits your own sense of efficiency in performing this work.